運が悪かったんだよ、お前らは。
I don't care, Majima, for fuck's sake. Oh, I didn't even really lose health. Oh, speaking of real-life locations, this location was actually not in the original game. This is a real-life restaurant in Tokyo, Japan. The Gindako... What the fuck was the... Gindako Highball Tavern. I think because when they're developing and making new games, they will get sponsorship. There is product placement all over these fucking games. They will get, I guess it's technically sponsorship with real life restaurants, and in exchange feature their location as a real like restaurant location that you can eat at in the game. And this is definitely one of, they've actually been in the series for a while, I think ever since Yakuza 5, so they must re-up the contract or something every year. Yeah, you would not believe how much product placement is actually in these games. We passed by it earlier. I'll run back to it real quick. But this store location is called Don Quixote. And this location is in every single Yakuza game that takes place in Tokyo. And some of the ones that don't. This is a real-life store that does exist in Tokyo, Japan, called Don Quixote. And this is the actual theme song that it plays. And I think it, like, I've never been, obviously, but it must be this kind of store. I'm sure this is an accurate depiction of the interior. Don Quixote. And you can buy such items as Boss Rainbow Mountain Coffee. Boss Coffee is an actual brand of coffee in Japan. And this is the actual Boss Coffee product being sold as a health item in Yakuza. Same with Suntory tea and mineral water. CC Lemon is an actual product. Premium malts, so malt beer. And, oh, I guess not in this game, but some games will have 7-Up and stuff like that in here as too. So these games have product placement all over the place, which I'm sure must help with the development costs, but really product placement isn't all that obscene in these games. Like, I know product placement is something that people usually decry, but considering the game is really down to earth and does depict a location that is based on a real district of Tokyo, Japan, with real life landmarks, for fuck's sake. I mean, like, I guess you lose literally nothing when you lose, so I guess it's not that bad, but man. So anyway, yeah, what's interesting is this game was released in 2005, so it would have been researched and developed after after the passage from the book that I just read. So the developers would have, if they did visit Kabukicho, which is where Kamurocho is supposed to be based off, they would have been researching the tourist-friendly version of Kabukicho, funnily enough, post the fire that it described, inspiring a Times Square style purification of the location, right? What is funny though is at the beginning of the game, Kiryu was in Kamurocho and it during 1995. So the Kamurocho that Kiryu would be familiar with would match the description that we just read out of the book. So maybe the developers of the game weren't to know, but Kiryu would probably be experiencing a lot of culture shock from coming back to Kamurocho post-cleanup compared to what it must have been like back in 1995. At this point in Kamurocho, really this street, as you can see from the design of the entryway, is known as Pink Street, and this is really the strip of the city that still has all the sleaze and sex associated with it. As you can see, this is a barker for one of the clubs of this area, advertising to people. You got Homeboy here with the sign on. Look at all these like super like kitschy, like in-your-face advertisements. It really does feel like walking down the strip of Vegas almost. And in the original game, in particular, in the PS2 game, the barkers would run up to you and initiate dialogue and shove a pocket tissue into your inventory, and the pocket tissue would have an ad on it for a club. So that would be an experience that people who actually live in Japan would be familiar with, because that's a real thing that does happen in places like this in Tokyo, to have barkers. And again, hey, I used to visit Las Vegas all the time, and I can tell you they have the same thing in Las Vegas. Just people who just shove ads for sex shops into your face and into your hands. Try not. Damn it. Oh, I don't care. There are real-life landmarks that you would find in Kabukicho. Here in Kamurocho, there are storefronts that are real-life storefronts you would be able to find in Tokyo. But it is still a fictional city. It is still a fictionalized city in Tokyo. So there are landmarks and locations that are explicitly not actual locations in Tokyo. The most prominent of which would be Millennium Tower here. I don't know if Millennium Tower is based on an actual tower that does exist. That eyesore of a skyscraper changed this whole town. When was it built? 4 years ago. So this building was not in Kamurocho when Kiryu was arrested. That's why this city was not really open for him to explore. I don't know, I forget what the remake does, but it would, in the original PS2 game, it would have been impossible to see Millennium Tower at any point during the 1995 portion of the game. I think they might have just removed it from the skybox, because only, I think, up to right there, where the camera is looking at, is an actual model of the building. I think everything above that is just a part of the skybox. they definitely didn't model. That's definitely not an actual building model going all the way up. I think it's just part of the skybox. You can kind of tell. It looks pretty JPEG-y after a certain point, that's for sure. So it is supposed to be evocative, no, of an actual Tokyo metropolitan, you know, post-apocalyptic cosmopolitan location. But it's not supposed to be any... I mean, it is Kabukicho, but it's not specifically Kabukicho. It's just very heavily inspired by Kabukicho. But it's still very distinctly its own city as well. And what's great is because all of the Yakuza games take place in Kamurocho, you really start to get this sense of familiarity with the location. It's like how, you know, in Resident Evil, after a first playthrough, even a casual player would be really intimately familiar with the layout of the Spencer estate as a location, because they have to run back and forth across it the entire game. Kamurocho ends up being the same way, especially because it's the same location across 7 different games by this point. After a while, you get a real sense of familiarity with the locations. You start... there's Majima. You start getting used to the layout of the city. You start being able to recognize where certain locations are just from being told the street name. I mean, I'm really bad at navigating by street names. I'm a landmark navigator. But, you know, normal people would be able to, you know, like, if someone says it's on Shichifuku Street, you know, after a while, you'd be like, oh, I know where that is. I know how to find that location based on being told, oh, it's on Shichifuku Street. Because I know where Shichifuku Street is. I've ran up and down Shichifuku Street in 4 different games. I know exactly where that side quest location is telling me to go. This is a good prominent location, too. This is Theater Square. And I'm gonna get a fucking... Why are these so frequent? Goodness gracious. Go away, my dude. Go away. Maybe when there's less frustration of... Yeah, maybe that's something I'll save for later. But it would be cool to go through the more prominent locations of Kamurocho. Like, I really do like Theater Square. The reason being it's called Theater Square is because it's got the movie theater right there. This building is supposed to be a movie theater. You almost never go in there. Actually, yeah, somewhere is a movie theater. I think Coma Stadium is actually like a venue. Yeah, because I think there's a couple of like music venues that get advertised. But there, right here, I think is a... God fucking damn it. Fast boy! I think this... no, that looks like a restaurant. That's the other thing that's really nice about the way these games are designed. Wow, you're actually going up there. I can't go up there. I think... here, maybe? Somewhere. Not down here. Scary down here. Let's get a key. That is something that's nice. I talked about this a little bit with like the animations of the NPCs that you'll see just walking around, but the attention to detail that's put into crafting this city location and all of its tiny little environmental details, it's so fun to just walk around Kamurocho and take a look at everything. You know, like, I personally am a fiend when it comes to looking at just art assets that are plastered on scenery. And it's like overload in a game like this. Look at this unique art asset that they made and put in the game just to have in this one location that isn't repeated anywhere else because it's advertising a movie or something. Bob. What is that? A handgun called Bob? What does that say? Oh, here's the movie theater. Jesus Christ. You can buy tickets right here. But look at that. They modeled the ticket station. They modeled these movie... They put the art assets in for these movie posters. Yeah, what the hell? A Ginks? Had a shotgun called Bob. I want to see that. Naked Soldier in theaters now. Yeah, this is like the entire series is like this, where you can just go around and just look at shit and just be like, look at the attention to detail that went into specifically sculpting every nook and cranny, every empty alleyway that doesn't have anything in it. There's nothing here. There's no reason the game will ever send you here. But they modeled it, and they filled it with art assets, and made an algorithm for NPC scripting to go down that way, etc. Really, in particular, this one, I can think of very few things that the game series throughout the franchise ever really sends you down this way for. Man, these guys are just really obtrusive. Please, good sir. Please understand. So, after doing a slight walking tour and a slight background lesson on, you know, this location that has finally opened up for us, of Kamurocho, we are going to really slam the fucking brakes on the main story. we are going to just stop dead in terms of the main story for a good long while, because as you can see, there's a lot of side quests open up. We're going to be doing all of the side quests as they become available throughout the game. So, like, new chapter, boom, story is stopping, we are doing side quests. The end. And we're also going to do as much of the side activity and the minigame content that is available throughout the game. Because there is a lot of extra content that is littered throughout the game. And some side quests are even hidden behind the extra minigame style content. So we are going to continue our tour of Kamurocho by doing all of the side quests, and then once the side quests are done, we're gonna hit up all these minigame locations that are available to us at this time. First, I will save. Maybe near the end, but it would be also nice to do a venue tour, a tour of all the shops and restaurants and other interactable locations throughout the city as the game goes. We'll see about that one. But I'm definitely just going to do like the side quests as they are available. And then we shall continue the main story. Go ahead and save first. Sub-story time. So we did trigger one accidentally earlier. We're gonna go ahead and hold off on that one, though. Actually, we triggered two, didn't we? We're gonna do this one up here first, though. Right after this random battle, because this is an RPG, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone complaining about Yakuza 7 being a turn-based RPG is full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. Yakuza is and has always been a RPG, a Japanese RPG even. The only difference between every other Yakuza game that's ever been made and what Yakuza 7 is gonna be is that Yakuza 7 is a turn-based RPG. Nani? Kitty was like, this fucking stupid shit. I love when people write it like that, son of a bitch. See, if this ever happens, always call their bluff. Tell them, sure, call the police. Not a sterling defense, but it would rile up the emotions, yes. Yeah, so lest you be concerned that there are roving gangs of like 3 to 5 men going around the city just randomly picking fights with random dudes that they see in gray suits. Almost literally every single sub-story, side quest in the Yakuza franchise inevitably results in just beating the ever-loving shit out of the people involved. In one regard or another. The nerve. This bitch about to catch these hands, you know what I'm saying? That being said, Kiryu is a little traditionalist. Kiryu wouldn't really punch a woman. He's old school. But he will lay these hands, you know what I'm saying? Keep it strong. So, Kiwami, being a remake of the original PS2 game, does have, I think, every single sub-story that was in the original PS2 game remade, with minor differences, but on the whole, they are faithfully reproduced. Yeah, reproduced, that's the word. The thing is, the sub-stories, the side quests, in Yakuza 1 on the PS2 were very, 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 very simplistic. Like, that whole sub-story was just, you run into a random female NPC, she initiates dialogue, you get into a fight, like, combat is initiated with a different NPC, you beat up that NPC, that initiates more dialogue, and then the sub-story is complete. It's very basic, it's very simplistic. Let me take another one, Dick. I'll beat these guys up, and then I'll get another pocket. There are some sub-stories from the original PS2 game that did have a little bit more production value put into them. But there are also a bunch of sub-stories in Kiwami, in Yakuza Kiwami here, that were made new for this new game. And it's gonna be really easy to tell for some of them. Just, like, step back and look at the wider structure of the sub-story and think about, like, when you remove all of the framing around it, what were the actual event flags that got checked as part of this sub-story? Again, what was that sub-story we just did? Dialogue, combat, dialogue. That was it. Everything else is window dressing. So if you keep that in mind, you're going to be able to tell pretty clearly which sub-stories were from the PS2 game and which sub-stories may have been added for this re-release. Again, some of them were a little bit more, they had a little bit more going for them, but I'm gonna let you think for yourself and try and figure out, was this sub-story in the original PS2 game, or is this new? So we initiated the dialogue for this earlier. So I did already mention that this sub-story was in the original game. But you can still pay attention to what actually happens during the sub-story, and it still is very first-time experimental PS2 game level design.
What?
Women I've defended on the internet. Women who slept with me.
Huh?
See, Yakuza Kiwami engine wouldn't actually have a problem with having the fight initiated, quote-unquote, in front of the club, but because this was in the original PS2 game, they gotta move the location to an alleyway that's a little bit more conducive to a combat encounter. Because the original PS2 game couldn't really handle initiating a combat encounter in a part of the city that was only modeled to be viewed from an isometric top-down camera perspective. There are so many, like, it really feels like, I don't have the actual numbers, but in the original PS2 game, there are so many, there are only so many locations that they modeled across the city in intricate enough detail to have an up-close look with the camera in order to initiate a combat encounter sequence. So you will have those funny instances where an enemy encounter will run up to you and initiate combat, and then the screen will fade to black, and then fade back in, and you'll have transitioned to somewhere that's actually like 5 feet away from where you were in the city when the dialogue was initiated. And then after you finish the combat, it goes right back to where you were standing earlier. Oh, man. That's actually one of my favorite things about this series, is no matter how far in the future we go, no matter how far ahead we get, it doesn't matter that we're on the coming up to being on the PS5, this franchise is still built on the skeleton of an old PS2 game, and they never really are ever gonna update it from... They're never gonna replace those bones, you know what I'm saying?